What's better than earning money from a 9-to-5 job? It's earning money while you sleep, which is made possible if you start investing. You're listening to the Real Estate Investing Demystified with your very own dynamic duo, Ava Benesocky and August Biniaz. Tune in as we discuss everything real estate, both on the passive and active sides. We feature life-changing stories of today's real estate leaders that will help build your own roadmap to success. This is a show that will lead you to a diversified portfolio, a much bigger revenue, and a next-level venture that brings you a smooth cash flow. Let's get this episode started. All right, welcome back to Real Estate Investing Demystified. We're going to switch things up a little bit here. First, let's talk basketball.
Whoa, that was quick, Ava. You got into it real fast. And
I'm excited.
You know, every time we welcome back, I feel like there's our audience literally can't wait till the next episode comes out. Like we're some kind of an HBO episode where people can't wait for it to come out.
Me, August. Don't kill my vibe. Right. I want to talk a little basketball 101. And our guest here today, he was actually a professional basketball player. But man, the memories I have back in high school, being a basketball player myself, not to toot my own horn or anything here, but I was so good at basketball that in grade 10, I made the senior team. I was the only grade 10er to make the senior team.
Oh, wow.
Which was a pretty big accomplishment. But not only that, I played basketball outside of school as well on a AA team.
Wow.
These girls were all 6 foot, 6'2", like they were just incredible basketball players. So I couldn't believe that I made that team and I was playing and I was a shooting guard. So we're best known for 3-pointers we were very good at doing 3-pointers. So John and I will one day have to have a 3-pointer shoot off.
For sure. But in that small town in rural Alberta, what was the demographics like? Was there a lot of was there a lot of black girls on your guys' team or
no, there wasn't. There wasn't one actually.
Okay.
But I was still
okay. Fair enough.
Awesome. So
let's get into the show.
Yeah, let's right into the show. Yeah, I want to introduce our guest, guys. Today we're actually joined by John Pugh. John is a real estate expert with over 20 years of experience, leading projects worth over $2 billion. As founder of Pugh Management, he focuses on multifamily and industrial developments. Now, John's background includes architecture, a master's degree in MIT, and a past career as a professional basketball player in Australia. So welcome to the show, John. We're excited to get into things with you.
Welcome, John.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Awesome. So before we dive into real estate, John, talk to us about your journey in basketball. You know, you got into the NBA Players Association camp. You were the top 50 players in the country in your senior year. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it was quite an experience. I was 6'10" at the age of 15, and I had played. I got into playing when I was 11 years old, and took it really seriously. And one day, my name showed up on a top 100 list, and then a few years later, I started getting letters from Duke and North Carolina and all types of teams. And next thing you know, I got invited to the top 50 players in the country camp, the NBA Players Association camp, and it was for if they were to have a draft straight out of high school, this is the group that would have gotten drafted. And Kobe Bryant was there. A lot of big name NBA guys were there, and it was a great experience, a lot of fun. And I love, the one thing that I learned from that experience was that I play up to my competition, and that's kind of always how I've been. So I've always tried to surround myself with A players, and I feel like you're just so much better by doing that, whether you're talking about business or basketball. So yeah,
absolutely,
100%. Yeah, I mean. Talking about kind of your academic background as well, Ava mentioned about MIT. Talk to us about that. So, I mean, MIT is one of the best schools in the world. You hear about it, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. How did from high school basketball, obviously MIT. Talk to us about that journey, how you got there, and then we're going to kind of get into
how that flowed you towards development and everything else.
Yeah. So. Well, kind of to the point of the kind of playing with the best, I learned from my time on Wall Street that there was a very high preference put towards going to certain schools for certain types of jobs. And I recognized that if I wanted to be at the top of the game in finance and or development or anything else that I did, I was going to have to find a way to get into a school like that. And that to me was my path. I'd always had a real interest in buildings and design of buildings, and had always had an interest in drawing and was pretty darn good at it. And a friend of mine did this program and helped them bridge the gap from a non-traditional architecture background to be able to go to MIT School of Architecture, which at the time it still is one of the top 5 programs in the country. So that was a 3.5-year program. I did that. I got out. I worked as an architect for about 3 years, got my registration, and then I fairly quickly recognized that I really belonged in real estate development, given my finance and business background combined with the architecture background. So yeah, but it was amazing, being surrounded by people that were just super inspired and excited about and passionate about what they were doing. And that to me is what gets me excited about working, speaking with people like you, working with people like you guys, and the people that I find challenging and fun to work with. I think that to me is what I really learned, is that you go and look for the best people that are striving and ambitious and looking to do new and exciting things, and things will work out pretty well for you. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Talking a little bit about myself personally, kind of my journey. I started out as a general contractor doing small fix and flips. Eventually started my own development company, building single family home more on the luxury side. But I was always fascinated about developers, people who were building these, skyscrapers or high rises. And I remember in Vancouver, there was a big development. The Pan Pacific Hotel was being built, which was a combination of hotel and condos. And I found out that there was this 5 different companies were involved, these big developers. And I'm like, at that time, I didn't understand anything about syndicated deals or how joint ventures were put together. And it was really fascinating to me. And I was kind of my start kind of realizing how these deals are put together while you were in one of your kind of first jobs within the world of, if it's either development or architecture or a combination of the two. Did you realize that at some point, that how are these Goliaths in this business able to have hundreds of millions of dollars through a portion of it being equity, portion of it being debt, to be able to do these large projects? Were you ever curious about, as we call in the space, capital stack, how the funding came about?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It was, to that point, I think just as an inspirational piece that I kind of learned from was I had a girlfriend when I was about 20, I think I was 21, 22 years old, and her father was a developer, and I had never met a developer before. And I remember thinking, I got to know her well. I met her father, and he was a nice guy, and he had a great life, and it was a beautiful home, and it was a great, great family. And I remember thinking, like, he's just a normal human being. He's just figured something out that's allowed him to have a great life. And that was kind of the seed, I think, that it was kind of planted, to some extent for me, understanding that there is a path to this ultimate destination. And in terms of the capital stack, like understanding that piece, that, I didn't know anything about that until I worked at Samuels and Associates it was a $1.5 billion project that ended up selling for $2.2 billion. That project was extremely complicated capital stack, as you could imagine. And, I was tangentially involved in that, but it was also helping them look at other acquisitions. So it was a matter of constantly thinking about who are the particular investors for these types of investments, and where's that capital coming from, and how can we layer the capital in such a way that we can optimize the return. So that was just like a very, and that wasn't my primary thing. I was development. I wasn't the acquisitions and finance person. So I was involved in creating some of those pro formas and thinking about that with the team. But that was my first exposure to it. And then not long thereafter, I went out on my own, and then it's just a matter of saying to yourself, okay, well, we got to figure out how to put this deal together. It's a good deal. We know it's a good deal, so we're going to be able to attract investors. And then how do we use debt to maximize the return, but minimize the risk. So we're not taking too much risk on, but at the same time, maximizing return on equity. So, so I learned a lot about that, just, working for that largest shop, Samuel's, and then just doing it. I think, so much of it is learned by just doing it. But in terms of like an interest, definitely have always had an interest in understanding value. That to me has always been something that I've, as a kid, the first video game I ever got was it was like an Atari type of thing, and it was called Wall Street, and it was buying and selling stocks.
Oh, wow.
And I
Okay.
just sat there like I was, 8 years old or 9 years old, and I would buy it. And then like, oh, there's an earthquake in Singapore, your stock goes up or down. And anyways, but understanding the value of things has always been really fascinating to me, because it's, I don't know, like why is Microsoft stock at $200 a share? Like what is that? Where does that number come from? And that to me was always really fascinating. And then getting into buildings and development, it's the same thing. Like, why is a building worth $32 million instead of $35 million, right? And so that drove my interest into really digging into pro formas. And so I've played a lot of different roles on different development teams in terms of a general partner position, but I've played a big part of what I've done is putting together the pro forma and managing the investor conversations, communications, and making sure that what we're doing is ultimately what's going to, where it's going to end up. So, but yeah, it's a super fascinating thing, I think, and but to the point that I think also to that point is like
Yes.
the question about like I went to MIT because I remember I was looking at schools, and somebody asked me like, well, aren't you going to put like a safety school on there? My list was Harvard, MIT, University of Pennsylvania. It was all the best schools. And I was like, no, if I don't get in, then I'll just, maybe at some point I'll do a safety, but like I don't want to do it unless I can go to the best school, because I know that I'm not going to have the capital available to me if I don't, right? And so it just opened doors. And that was just me having experience on Wall Street, seeing the types of jobs I could get given, my college experience versus going to grad school. And it doesn't mean you have to do that. It just makes it easier. It greases the skids. It makes it a little easier to connect with those people. So now I have a MIT alumni network, and
Yeah,
I know
that's
somebody with a $3 billion investment fund, right? And so I might not have known that person otherwise.
So, well,
yeah,
talking about kind of those big numbers, billions here, billions there. That's, the world of real estate. A lot of times, people don't realize about how much goes into kind of putting these deals together when it comes to partners, joint ventures, as we've been discussing. But talk to us about kind of obviously your Pugh Management, which is your investment firm focused on development. What we've learned, co-founding CPI Capital together, is the equity side of the business is such an important part of the business, right? And
Sure.
some groups go down. Like I was just speaking earlier, they're multi-generational. They're equity heavy. They have a lot of investments. They've built that through a few generations. But then there's also groups that go to the market to raise capital for their deals, right? They're not just using their own capital. At times they go to institutions that, larger family office type of investors.
Sure.
They can have just one or two investors to fund their deals, or in other cases,
Yep.
will retail. Like majority of our investors, I'd say it's a good mix, but
it's a good
majority
mix.
are
Yeah, family
retail.
office.
What's the vision for Pugh Management? What is your thesis when it comes to the kind of equity for your deals you're trying to put together? Is it a case by case situation? Have you,
Yeah, I mean,
how do you look at it?
just to some extent, it's a case by case situation. If it's of a certain size, for example, we've worked on projects from, 20 to $70 million that we've raised capital for, which were friends and family. The $20 million projects are in the friends and family range. To, we were with the $70 million project we're currently in right now. That's a partnership with a family office who has institutional relationships for equity. So we're a small piece of that particular larger equity stack. Just in terms of the larger vision for what Pugh Management wants to do, I mean, what I'd ultimately like to be able to do is build a platform, kind of a fairly traditional real estate platform, which allows us to develop, manage properties, and play the role where we're going to be building these assets and holding them for the longer term, but continue to manage those assets as well for that longer term and have a piece of that. So putting in anywhere from 2 to 10% of the equity stack, bringing in a limited partner for the larger piece of it, and then helping them basically by managing that professionally and making sure that the returns are what are expected. So, so that's really, the larger vision, because I think, but there's also, I work with family offices, and they want to hold things long term, or they do have holdings long term that they want to think about how do we maximize the value here? Is there a development play here, or should we hold and wait for a better opportunity, better time to develop a particular site? So those kind of decision-making pieces, I advise investors and families on those as well. And so it's multiple conversations, and those can turn into deals eventually as well, right? It's just a matter of finding the alignment and understanding the priorities of all parties that are involved in a deal, and then allowing for creating kind of the right environment that works for everybody's benefit. That's the biggest thing that I've learned. It's like there's always multiple ways, right, to solve for a mutually beneficial outcome for people in a deal. And there are definitely people out there walking around looking to win. Every negotiation is, how do I win this negotiation, as opposed to how can we both find a common ground where everyone's going to win. So I try to stay away from those people.
That makes sense. Let's talk about a journey of a deal. I mean, before we started, we were chatting about this. I was making a comparison with a lot of multi-generational kind of Goliaths of the business developers here in Vancouver, particularly. I'm sure it's the same case around the world, but these are families or institutions that have owned real estate for a long time, either if it's a legacy type of strategy like you just spoke about, or kind of that build and sell type of strategy. But a lot of times a lot of their net worth of that institution or that family or that multi-generational family is in the properties that they own, and at times it's just land sitting there or a potential for that, like a land sitting there that currently maybe producing some cash flow, but they eventually want to build it. I've seen that many times with a lot of these different groups. When it comes to a firm like yours that might not be multi-generational, and you're trying to compete with these giants, what does your journey look like? Do you buy a piece of land, and you talked about performance as well? Do you buy a piece of land and then plan to build something on it, whatever it may be, if it's residential, commercial, and then the plan is to sell it? Or could the plan be at times buying something that going through in a rezoning process, possibly entitlement process, maybe buying and sitting on it for a while? Is it all deal dependent? Do you have a certain strategy? Talk to us about that, because a lot of times people just think about development. They think about just buying a piece of land, building it, selling it, but it could be more.
Yeah, like are developers kind of purely opportunistic investors? Like,
yeah. So I think the answer to your question is it's kind of multi. There's variety of ways to look at deals. For the most part to date, I've been kind of using the merchant builder strategy, which is you get a piece of property under agreement, you make the closing contingent upon approvals, get your approvals for the project that you plan to do there. You take it all the way through all the approvals process, and then you close on the deal with the equity, start the construction, build the project, lease the project, sell the project. So that's referred to as merchant building. That's primarily what I've done in the past. I'm looking now for what you're referring to. So there's like land banking and there's covered land plays, right? Land banking is family or an institution has money they need to park somewhere, and they believe in the long-term growth story narrative around a particular place or city or neighborhood within a city, and they start to accumulate assets over time. So one example is that is Samuel's, where I worked. They were the second largest owner of real estate in the Fenway, and upon the sale of a large portfolio by that family, they then redeployed that capital into that neighborhood, and they bought up a good chunk of the neighborhood, and then they proceeded to put together a long-term plan for redevelopment, rezoning of that neighborhood, and ultimately created a ton of value. With JP Morgan was their primary equity partner in a lot of those developments, and so they went on to build, multi-$100 million mixed-use developments across that neighborhood, and that was them buying it. But some of that was covered land, so they're getting rent from tenants that were in an existing building, or maybe there's a McDonald's and they just had 10 years left on their lease or whatever. But the covered land play piece is something that I'm definitely interested in looking for now, because I think we're in kind of an interesting time where land prices haven't come down quite as much as I think they should, given some of the challenges around supply and demand but whether it's multifamily or industrial or just commercial in general. And as a result, I think we're in a time period where if you can find a good asset that's cash flowing that ultimately could be redeveloped in the future, I think that's the kind of thing that's a good idea to buy. And there's not a lot of landowners that are willing to give you the time required in an agreement today to go and develop land. Maybe it takes 2 years to entitle the land. Maybe it takes 2 years for the market to come back. So there's a lot of nuances in terms of those agreements that can be negotiated, but there's some of the challenges and opportunities ultimately, I think, that you kind of have to deal with. But in terms of the family thing, there's definitely families that buy up property and they're thinking of it as a covered land play, a long-term investment. I have not been necessarily, other than with that group Samuels that I worked before at some point, I've not been involved with that, but I've been involved with family offices who are investing mostly in merchant building opportunities that, from relationships that I have. And then I also know that they are buying other properties, but I'm not necessarily involved in that. So that's coming from business opportunities, relationships they have with their own existing businesses, things like that, mostly.
Got it. You have a connection to East Coast, obviously, and then you made the move to Tampa recently, and then you were talking about vision, kind of some of these institutions look farther ahead, and they believe in a certain city and they invest in that city. It seems like you've made more than just an investment into Tampa. Talk to us about that move. Was it just for great weather? Was there something economical? Was there something that you saw as far as the city's growth that you could come in and kind of help build the landscape? Talk to us about your move to Tampa.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I spent I grew up in Washington, D.C. I went to college in New York City. I ended up after playing basketball in Australia, I ended up in Boston for grad school, and I was there for 17 years. And Boston's a great place and enjoyed being there. But a combination of factors, but in terms of the economically, Tampa is growing. It's a great city. I think it's been somewhat underinvested in, kind of a hidden gem until the last few years. Obviously, the pandemic hit in 2020. People really got on people's radars. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here because of the growth, but also because there's neighborhoods in the middle of the city that have homes on them that are, I don't know, $300,000, and you're literally in the middle. You can get to all the best places in the city, right? And so that's a small example, but the reality is with really smart long-term planning, which the city's done a nice job of kind of revising and updating their zoning and trying to make it easier for developers to build here. It's only getting better, right? And so I think there's a really nice long-term trajectory here. There have been some pretty great relocations of large companies. Just yesterday, the day before, Foot Locker announced that they're going to move their headquarters to St. Petersburg, which is the sister city here of Tampa. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
So the more, I mean, as you know, the more high-paying jobs that move to a city like this, the better. And there's just the quality of life is so high here for people, and the cost of living, even though it's gone up a lot, it's still relative to other places like the Northeast.
Yeah.
It's still a lot better. So I think
Work-life balance, being away from some of the most beautiful beaches in the world.
Yes.
You know, a
yeah,
lot of sports teams, the redevelopment that's happening
cool. Yeah.
with the baseball Tropicana
Fields.
field.
Yeah.
Oh, huge,
Tampa Bay
huge.
Yeah.
Rays, that was a multi-billion-dollar project. I think is public-private partnership. I mean, we're very
Yep.
bullish. We got a dog in the race when it comes
We
to
do.
Tampa. We wanted to kind of get
Talking
your
of
perspective. But I was what in the preparation for this show, I was watching one of their podcasts you had done. But there is a development in center of Tampa where I think your offices actually might be there, or maybe I'm mistaken. But it's like people can live there. They can go out. Everything is there that city was involved in. I don't particularly remember the name of that neighborhood.
Oh, it's Water Street. It's called Water Street. Yep.
Water
Mhm.
Street.
Yep. So Water Street was developed by Jeff Vinnick and Cascade. It was a partnership between Jeff Vinnick's a billionaire who was a Fidelity hedge fund investor for many years, and he started his own investment firm. So that's the name is Strategic Property Partners. He's since sold his portion, his ownership. I think Cascade now completely controls it. I don't know the exact details, but they were the ones who developed it. It's a multi-billion-dollar development in downtown Tampa, and it's got office, multifamily, retail, great restaurants and bars. And so it's really revitalized the downtown area. It's kind of adjacent to the downtown area, but it's a great development and really exciting as a catalyst for more investment and development. So there's a ton of new projects going on. Related is it's another company that's been very active here, and so they're building hundreds of apartments at the moment, both mixed income and I believe some luxury as well. There's condo development going on. So it's a really interesting mix of types of development. And it's really, a lot of it's centered around the Hillsborough River, which is kind of next to downtown. So there's a lot of really interesting things happening. I think, like somebody said this, and I don't know if it's necessarily true, but I believe in the concept that ultimately it'll turn into something like Miami, right? Because Miami will always be the big brother probably, but Tampa will just grow and grow and grow in such a way that it will be, it already is a great city in itself, but it's only going to get better and more interesting as more and more people come here. And I think there's more investment. Right. So I'm excited about it. And like you were saying, there's this beautiful, like long-term trajectory that you can easily see as somebody in investment and development. It's very clear that people are going to keep coming here, and it's only going to go up in value.
Exactly, John. I mean, when it comes to oversupply or hypersupply, we've noticed that development goes in cycles. For example, in Tampa, there was a lot of development in the 60s and 70s.
Yes.
Right?
Particularly in multifamily. So
particularly in multifamily.
When we look at multifamily in our acquisition department, we're noticing a lot of 60s and 70s.
Built, but it fell off kind of in the 80s and 90s. So as we were kind of discussing earlier, John, developers are they more pure opportunistic investors where there's probably going to be a lot of opportunity in Tampa where they buy a piece of land or an older property that is cash flowing, and then they wait for that kind of opportunistic time when it's the right environment to develop. As Tampa's growing, there's probably going to be a lot of opportunity for that, which is really different from our model that we utilize here, which is multifamily value add, where as long as there's an arbitrage between the interest rates and our untreated yield on cost, which is cash on cash day one, which really allows you to achieve the LP economics you're looking for, the deal becomes feasible. But talk to us a little bit that and the excitement you have around Tampa, the vision you have for expanding Pugh Management.
I think I just wanted to add to that to this as well is kind of the idea here is the concern about hypersupply. I mean, oversupply is the Achilles heel of a developer. And it goes in these cycles, and we can see that as well. Where do you think? Obviously, that must be back of your mind always when it comes
absolutely.
to
absolutely. No, that's an important point you're both making, I think. Yeah, I mean, my understanding is there's 11,000 units in the pipeline right now that are either under construction, being delivered in the near term, et cetera. And there's 45,000 units total in Tampa. And so, I mean, that's a massive amount of units being dumped into this location. So I do think there is, over the short to near term, going to be some impacts. I mean, clearly there's going to be impacts on rents. My understanding, there has been some impacts already on rents. But that doesn't mean that there's not a great long-term story. I think it's like you were saying before, Ava, it's a cyclical business, and you just kind of have to roll with things and be as nimble and strategic as you can to make sure that the investors are getting the returns that they are looking for, and that you're in a position to capitalize on it when things start moving in the right direction again. And it's only a matter of time. That's what's the great part about the business cycle, right? So
Absolutely. In Tampa, I mean, the demand is really growing. I mean, lots of people are moving there. This
absolutely,
supply,
it
and I've
just
read
keeps
on a couple
going.
articles that supply is going to kind of average out end of 2025-ish, right? So we're not in, it's
And
if
nobody's building it. When they
Absolutely.
started going up, they weren't building, like,
so it
stopped
actually
completely.
stopped
They
construction to
stop. That's
stop.
a great point.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of there's a lot of supply being built right now, but there's still a
A
lot of
lot of
people coming
demand.
in,
Yes.
and the demand is still good. And then it's just a matter of what August just said, which is, yeah, there people like me. I'm not building anything right now in downtown Tampa, and I know multiple projects that are multi-hundred unit projects that are just sitting right now, and they're not under construction. So, and a typical, lifespan for a development is around 2 years in terms of construction time. So, not including permitting. So, if that permitting pipeline and the construction pipeline has kind of come to a stop, which really
Yeah.
has, that's going to be really great for the fundamentals in 2 years, because there's just not going to be enough apartments for everybody. So, yeah, I absolutely believe in that story. I think. Then it's just a matter of when's the right time to begin initiating these new projects, and being strategic about that, and finding ways to leverage, my local network and relationships, and be able to communicate that story to our investors and partners in the right way. So that's what we're working on right now. We're looking at finding those really great locations that we can capitalize on, we can control, and then bring in the right partners who understand that longer term vision for
Awesome.
investing here. Yeah.
Awesome, John. Now, John, what are your thoughts on the current economic environment? Do you see the Fed decreasing interest rates as the market predicts? And if the Fed does decrease rates, does it create a better environment for developers?
Yes, absolutely. They're definitely going to decrease rates. I think it will, over time. It will take a while. I think. I don't. Interest rate, just like interest rate hikes, there's always a lag with interest rate cuts and their effects, right? So there's like depends on who you ask, but I want to say it's like an 18-month lag, 12 to 18 months in terms of the impacts. You actually start seeing those impacts. If you think back to the rate hiking cycle, there wasn't really a noticeable slowdown until end of 23, early 24. There were some noticeable things. It wasn't like the whole world didn't blow up as some people thought it might happen, but there were noticeable impacts in terms of economics and business expansion. So yeah, absolutely. I think over time they're going to need to cut. My expectations are going to need to cut more than 100 basis points in the next, 12 months. My only concern with that is that could then be inflationary again, and so there could be a potentially for a vicious cycle if that does play out. My hope is that they're able to kind of thread the needle, which is not something that the Fed is necessarily great at doing in the last 3 to 5 years, but it seems like they've actually done a pretty good job with keeping the economy on the track thus far, and so I'm really interested to see kind of how it plays out. I'm hopeful that in later in 25, there'll be there's going to be really good investment opportunities, I think, in the next 12 months, because there's going to be some pain and some stress that's already kind of starting to emerge. I had a friend sent me this spreadsheet with I don't know. I think there's 40 properties that are potentially distressed that we're going to start looking at in the area, and that to me is like finding deals where you can step in with the right investment partners and restructure those deals in a way that makes sense for people. That to me is really going to be exciting and interesting for at least the next 2 years. And then while you're also doing that, we're also doing that. We're going to be looking for opportunities to invest. And like I said, late 25, early 26, I think the economy will start to really be, talking about the macro economy, will really start to be on a larger upward trajectory. So I'm hopeful. I think you have to be an optimist to be a developer, though. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We're
All
on the
right.
same page there, John.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much for sharing all that knowledge. We look forward to kind of watching your journey and as you grow and keeping you on top of our minds. So let's
Absolutely.
move to the next segment of the show.
All right. So the 10 championship rounds to financial freedom.
I'm nervous.
Whatever comes top of mind. Okay, John? First question. Are you ready?
Sure thing. Let's go.
Okay, let's do it. Who's been the most influential person in your life?
Boy, that would be my coach in college,
Oh,
Bob
nice.
Hill. He was an NBA coach. He coached me my senior year in college, and he showed me what was possible in life, which I truly appreciate.
Amazing.
I love that. I had a coach back in the day, not for basketball, but for ringette, who was influential, just like that.
Nice.
Love to hear that, John. All right, next question. What is the number one book you'd recommend?
Well, I'm reading a really great book right now, and I guess I have to recommend that. I think you both would enjoy it as well. It's called What It Takes by Stephen Schwartzman, the founder of Blackstone. You probably already read it because you're both very well read, but it's a great book, and I love the fact, I actually recently put a social media post up about it. I love the fact that he's very vulnerable and he's very open to the fact that he wasn't sure. He didn't have everything figured out as he was building Blackstone. Coming from somebody who had a Harvard MBA and all this great experience, he still had doubts before he went into his first, fundraising meeting. And I think that's just great to see somebody who's, held up as this supreme being in some way, as he's just a real person that struggles with everything, everybody else struggles with. So yeah, pretty cool. And also just a great story about building the biggest private equity firm in the world. So
yes, which spawned even BlackRock, which has over 10 trillion. But their numbers.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Assets under management. They do money management, so that kind of falls. But whereas Blackstone is actually kind of in a way own those over $1 trillion of assets. But another thing about Stephen Schwartzman is also surrounding yourself by other great people. His first partner, who's no longer with Blackstone, he was his connection to the White House and all of that great stuff. On their first fund, I think Japanese were some of their biggest investors. On their first fund, they raised over $1 billion.
I couldn't believe that when we were reading that.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Unbelievable. All right, John, next question. If you had the opportunity to travel back in time, what advice would you give your younger self?
Always recognize that you're capable of doing more than you ever imagined, and always aim high.
Love it. Awesome. All right. What's the best investment you've ever made?
Well, I guess it'd have to be a very recent investment that we put in. We made, let's see, we made 20 times equity return multiple.
Wow.
So that was the best investment I ever made.
I don't love that at all. 20x. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, John, what's the worst investment you've ever made? And what lessons did you learn from it?
Oh, wow. Geez. Everybody makes bad investments. I'm trying to think of the worst investment, though. That's an important one to know about too, right? Because it
doesn't have to be monetary.
To learn lessons from.
It doesn't have to be monetary. It could be more.
John's like, I've never made a bad investment in my life.
Well, yeah.
I'm too smart for that.
Yeah, I'd have to say I think there was an investment of my time and maybe in my college days. It could have been a little bit more effective and efficient with my time there. I was a full-time Division I basketball player, and And when I wasn't playing basketball, I was having a good time, but not necessarily as focused as I would like to have been on school. So, but it all worked out pretty well in the end. So,
Awesome, John. All right, next question. How much would you need in the bank to retire today? What's your number?
oh wow, geez, that's quite a question. Um, I don't want to retire. I don't have a number. I love working. I love what I do, and I have a. My expectation is I'd love to be like Buffett and Munger, because they just kept working and working and working, and it is because when you do something you love, it's not really work, right? It's your passion, and I don't care how much money I have in my bank account if in the end I'm doing what I enjoy and working with great people, and I've luckily been able to make enough money that I'm very comfortable and I'm happy with kind of what I have, and I'm happy to keep going. It's just fun. I enjoy the
Love it.
challenge. I enjoy working with good people. So yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, John, if you could have dinner with someone dead or alive, who would it be?
Um, George Washington. I read his biography not that long ago and was just so impressed by his journey from kind of a young age and all the challenges he overcame to obviously leading the army to the founding of the country, et cetera. And he really fought for what he believed in, and I think that's just a really fascinating journey that I'd love to hear more about. I mean, I could say Jesus Christ, I could see all types of really interesting people and great, meaningful people, but I don't know. That's an interesting life. Same with Benjamin Franklin, super fascinating guy that did some really interesting things. And yeah, I like the founding fathers. So yeah.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Nice. Perfect. Okay, John, if you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing now?
Oh, geez. I can't say I've ever thought about that.
We're giving him some pretty.
You coach basketball, right?
You stumped me.
Oh,
Yes, I coach my son's
oh,
youth
nice.
basketball team. So that's been very enjoyable. I mean, I guess I would do something like that. Yeah, absolutely. I love athletics. I believe in the importance of sports in young people's lives to figure out and learn about really important life lessons. And I think that would be really fun to do. So, August, thank you for that suggestion.
That's awesome. Okay, my favorite question, book smarts or street smarts?
Street smarts. Yeah, street smarts. I know a lot of really book smart people that are great people. They're not very good at business, and some of them, maybe they don't have any interest in business. But I love business, and business is a street smarts game, and obviously you can learn. You might not know something, but you can go to a book, go online, look it up, whatever. You can learn the technical stuff, right? If you don't know how to handle yourself in a conversation with certain types of people in a certain good or bad situation,
Mhm.
then you're out of luck. So yeah, street smarts 100%.
Comes first. Okay, last question, John. If you
All
had $1 million in cash and you had to make one investment today, what would it be?
right. Well, today, most of my money is in short-term treasuries waiting for opportunities. So I guess I'd be buying short-term treasuries with that because I think there's a lot of great opportunity ahead in the next 12 to 18 months.
Smart.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice. Awesome. That was great.
Yes, that
That's
was
it for the
amazing.
10 championship rounds. So, John, let everybody know how they can reach you if you don't mind, please.
Sure thing. I'm at Pugh Management. PUGHMGMT.com is the website. You can reach me. I'm on LinkedIn at John T. Pugh, P-U-G-H. And that is the best way to reach me. And we've always interested in having conversations with people that want to learn more, either as an investor or someone we might want to partner with. And yeah, happy to chat. So
Of course.
reach out.
He's pretty active on LinkedIn as well. He's got some great
Awesome.
newsletters and other content he creates.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we have
Well.
the lineup newsletter. It's a Substack newsletter, as well as we just launched the LinkedIn version. So we've got over 1,000 followers on Substack, which is awesome. And we launched the LinkedIn newsletter about a week and a half ago, and now we have like 700 followers. So we're chugging away.
Oh, good for you. And then you just launched a podcast.
And I would also I need to mention we have our podcast, Breaking New Ground, where we're speaking with people who are like yourselves, real estate entrepreneurs building their businesses, and would love to have you guys on there. It'd be fantastic. You're definitely a great example of some entrepreneurs that have done some interesting things and continue to do those things. So yeah. So
awesome, John. Would love
to. Thank you so much. Thanks for all your wisdom and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope this conversation enlightened you on how to win big in this highly profitable and risk-averse space. Get on your feet and embrace this world that offers so many opportunities just waiting for you out there. Continue your journey to becoming a savvy real estate expert by subscribing to the show at cpicapital.ca. Don't forget to leave a positive rating and share with your friends. See you on the next one.